But today, we've got solar panels and electric cars, which didn't exist, basically for the most part, when I put First Majestic together. And we've got two industries now that are consuming over 20% of the world's supply of this silver, and both of those industries are growing substantially over the next couple of years and a couple of decades. So there's really no place for silver to go but up, in my opinion.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Before we get started, we would like to thank all of you for helping us reach 30,000 subscribers here on YouTube. This has been an amazing journey and we absolutely love making the content here for the community, and we'll continue to grow. Subscribe and hit the alert button so we can stay in touch. Now, for today's video, we have Keith Neumeyer, the CEO and founder of First Majestic Silver. Keith, it's great to see you.
Hi, Ivan and Jim. Great seeing you as well again. And follow all your stuff and love what you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you so much, Keith. First question is, there's about 5 million electric cars produced a year, and the electric car industry is consuming 100 million ounces of silver annually, Keith. Where's all the silver going to come from in the future? Will there even be enough silver? What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, I throw these numbers out because I really would like, people to, do the work and really look at these numbers with some, thoroughness. There's a lot of secrecy in the business. You put a call into BMW or Apple, and ask them how much silver do they actually use. They're not going to tell you, right? So the Silver Institute does its best to come up with the numbers, and and often those are the numbers that I parrot, or repeat, because that's really the only kind of official numbers that we have. The automobile industry, I've done some of my own research, in addition to what the Silver Institute does, and you're right. That's 5 million cars or electric cars that were produced within a 90 million automobile industry. That number came from 2019, and people can go on the internet themselves and do their own research, and the number that the Silver Institute used as the demand for those 5 million cars, I think, was about 80 million ounces, just to be correct. I rounded up to 100 million ounces, and I have in interviews, but that was 2019. I have no clue what the 2020 numbers were, and I'm assuming due to COVID, maybe the numbers went down a little bit. No one knows because we don't have that kind of insight within the automobile sector. 2021, 2022, I'm pretty certain, based on what the governments are pushing globally, that whatever that number was in 2019 is going to be a multiple of that in 2021, 2022, and beyond. So, you can do the math yourself, in an environment where we have 1.4 billion automobiles sitting on the surface of the earth, and the automotive industry is producing approximately 5 million electric cars, and the governments are wanting to remove these fuel combustion cars from the surface of the earth. How many cars need to be produced in a year over the next 10 or 20, 30 years to replace this above ground fleet? We could all, work, put an Excel sheet together ourselves and do the math, but the numbers are pretty silly. And I can tell you for a fact that there's not enough silver, underground to supply this demand.
That's a good point with the typical electric car, whether it's Tesla or any of the other manufacturers. It's something like double or triple the amount of silver in an electric version versus a traditional internal combustion car. Is that roughly accurate? 2 or 3 times? Every car is different, I'm sure, but
yeah. And look, it's I look at the whole EV sector. Since my last interview, the one that you were mentioning, I've been thinking about this, and I look at copper as the highway, right? And you know, that's our road to the future. I look at silver as the glue, right? And you know, without silver, the road does not stay together, right? So you need the silver to you know, connect everything, to make everything work, and there's no replacement, you know, to it, because it's the, you know, electric conductivity, you know, it's malleability, and so on and so forth. It's just it's a great metal, and other than gold, you know, you're not going to replace silver with anything. You can try tin, you can try aluminum, you can, but none of these things will even come close to the efficiencies of silver. And as we push, you know, miniaturization and computerization to the limits, you know, of human, you know, capabilities, you know, you need, you know, these high intensive types of metals, you know, to achieve the, you know, the things that we're trying to achieve. So yeah, you know, whether it's 2 or 3 times as much silver in an electric car compared to a fuel combustion car, yeah, it's around that number. They're not going to tell you, but an electric car is basically a computer on a stack of batteries.
Yeah.
You know, quite a lot different than, you know, a fuel combustion car.
Well, you know, I've heard some people try to suggest that copper is a substitute, but it's really not. I mean, if you look at the electric conductivity charts, silver is this graph I just shared showing on the screen for you, Keith?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
silver is like, if you did it on a scale of 1 to 100, silver's 100. Silver defines.
Oh, it's
the chart.
interesting. I would have put gold as number 1. It's interesting that silver's number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gold has different properties, of course. But
Yeah.
copper's like a 97, and then I think gold was like a 78 on the scale of 1 to 100 in terms of electric conductivity. But
Yeah.
and
high speed communications, high speed electronics. You know, you got a Tesla car that's got something in the order of 6,000, you know, battery cells, you know, being run by a computer, and those battery cells heat up to fairly high temperatures, and they have to be shut off very quickly so they don't, you know, of course, cause issues. And so you've got a computer that's very responsible for the safety of that vehicle in very, very high intensive environment. You know, of course, in an automobile, there's nothing more intensive than that. So you gotta have some pretty darn good technology, and I don't think there's nothing like silver that could actually even come close.
well, with copper is of course cheaper, but it's not quite good enough at the job. And in a lot of these applications, speed matters in every bit of, and that leads me into solar.
Well, that's why I say copper's the highway and silver's the glue.
Yeah. For the big cables that obviously you need massive amounts of metal, they're going to go with copper just for cost. But the high performance parts in computer chips or soldering, I think in solar and electric vehicles, it's like silver makes sense. And people keep saying, is there going to be a different technology that's going to make silver obsolete? It's like, no, we know that the periodic table is pretty much set. It's not going to change. Right?
No, you know, it's you know, people can think that all they want, but you know, look, when something is dropping, people always try to come up with reasons for it, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we've had silver prices go from $30 to, you know, the low 20s, and, you know, people are trying to figure out why. Here I am, you know, telling the world about, you know, the values of silver, and people think I'm a quack, but
well, you're with a bunch of fellow quacks. Don't worry, we are the quacks. We have the quacks audience right here.
One of these days, people will figure it out. But
yeah, anyways. Let's change it from electric vehicles more to solar, because that's the other big growth sector that's consuming so much silver. And here, I'm going to read off a piece of paper here that I wrote. So we're currently, our electric grid's about 2.5% solar generation. And just to reach that level of 2.5% requires about 80 million ounces per year of silver just to maintain this level. And so now we've got Biden talking about 45% mandates in the bill that's going through Congress right now. There's buried in a couple thousand pages. There's a page in there about a 45% mandate for solar, which I think I mean, I like solar, but I think it would personally make the grid unstable, but that's another video. But let's just say 10% or 15%, which is probably a reasonable goal for solar as a percentage of our grid. Just to get to that level, a 10 or 15% target of solar, that would require something on the order of 200 to 300 million ounces of silver
Wow.
per year to get to about a 15%. Does that sort of jibe with your estimates of where solar's demand for silver is going?
We know that the silver or the solar panel industry consumes around 100 million ounces. And if you look at the solar panel industry a decade ago, it was much smaller.
Yeah.
But actually it was consuming, quite a lot of silver. And silver consumption has been pretty flat over the last 3 to 4 years due to the efficiencies that the solar panel companies have been able to bring into the business, right? So, because a lot of the solar panel companies, you probably remember a decade ago, and Obama, was famous, investor, or the U.S. government, put up a bunch of money into a company that ended up going bankrupt. But the point of my comment is that DuPont, who's the largest manufacturer of silver paste for the use in these solar panels, have now come to a point where they can't reduce the silver anymore that it's currently at.
Yeah, I've seen those graphs. Yeah,
they've reached a threshold. If they go lower, then the efficiencies of these panels are going to drop so substantially that there's really no point in using them. So
really,
so the solar panel industry has done a good job in improving the technology, but now we're going to start seeing the real growth, because with the governments changing, or legislation changing on a global scale. Of course, we see it in the United States, but it's throughout Germany, Japan, you name it, it's all over the world. Solar consumption is going to probably double or triple easily, in the next 3 to 5 years, and it could even be a much larger number than that. You're 45%. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
That would just be nutty if they would. Well, they couldn't achieve it anyways, if they tried, but even those kinds of numbers don't make sense.
Yeah, but a 10 or 15% solar, portion of our electric grid probably is feasible with enough backup, for if it gets cloudy. I live in Florida, and I have solar on my house, and hey, when a cloud comes over my house, I see it on my little app on my phone. My solar consumption drops by 75% instantly. So you got to have, I just don't see us getting to a 45% electric grid and having a stable grid. I mean, it just doesn't.
Yeah, it's going to be a supplement, and it's not going to be primary. And of course, governments are totally screwed up, as you know. But they can't really think much for themselves.
Yeah.
but like we're 50 years from now, I'm sure we'll be primary nuclear, but but silver is going to play an important role in that equation as well.
Well, that's Wall Street uranium. That's not, we're Wall Street silver. So for nuclear. And
my money's on silver, so that's where my so I'm a triple digit silver guy. And I should go to my comment the other day, because I saw some headlines come up regarding people are saying, Keith is saying that I'm now predicting some new higher range in silver prices, which I should clarify, because I'm not predicting $999 silver.
But three or 400 is still is where you were talking.
Let's make that clear. But in 2011 we saw 32 to 1, and that's when silver hit basically $50, and gold was 1,800. I think that 30 to 1 ratio is going to get challenged again, and if that's $2,000 gold, I think the math works out to about $75. I have to get a calculator out, but I think something like that. And if we're at $3,000, that's $100, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on the record, saying $3,000 gold is kind of where I think life is going to be within the next few years. And do I think $300 silver? If we see that anomaly, if we see the ratio actually get down to the mining ratio, which it should be at. Now, whether we ever get there, who knows? Maybe, hopefully I'll still be alive when that happens. But
you could see it. You've talked in the past that you think the industrial demand is going to exceed global mine supply within the next, I don't know, 5, 7, 10 years, where the Apples, the Samsungs, the Teslas of the world, China, just consume 100% of what the miners are producing, and there's nothing left for investors. So there's some point in the future where the above ground silver just gets depleted through deficits. And then it's more of a real, it's like the copper market. Whatever gets produced gets consumed right away. No one's storing it in vaults anymore. It's all been used. And it's more of a free trading market at that point, isn't it?
Well, I think at some point, the paper market will be overwhelmed. It just won't make sense financially for anyone to take the short side of the trade, because the physical market just as I said, overtakes the paper market. We're not there today for sure. We know that quite clearly, and that's we see that painfully, almost on a weekly or monthly basis. Whereby the paper market's definitely in control of the pricing of this very important commodity that is required for us to do all the things we want to do in the human race, which is completely screwed up in my mind. But when Wall Street lets go, it's anyone's guess, right? And but I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. We've seen platinum, we've seen uranium recently, we've seen cobalt, historically a few years ago. We do see these metals breaking out and finding their place. Silver is a tiny market. If you look at, global production, 800 million ounces of silver being produced by the miners globally, multiply that by $22 an ounce, $23 an ounce, you're going to $20 billion market, basically. How many times can that fit into the market cap of Apple? I don't know. It's a pretty silly number. So it's very easily manipulated. But and it does. Like if you're some 30-year-old trader sitting on a debt trading desk in New York, wouldn't you just love trading the crap? Like, why not? Like I'm sure there's people that listen to this that just love to do it because it's so easy to make money, right?
Yeah.
It just you get on the right side of that trade, and it's just so volatile. And so the banks have been overdoing it, and there's been a lot of money made over the last couple of decades, and eventually it'll come to an end. And when it does, we'll have a different discussion.
Well, the math we talk about with the demand and the demand going up, the supply coming down, it's not complicated. We're talking third grade math. It's nothing anyone should be able to figure this out. Are you surprised some multi-billionaire hasn't come along and just cleaned out COMEX for delivery for 100 million ounces?
But you can't do it legally. You can't do it. And I hear this, the miners, we've been a little bit slow selling metal this quarter because I don't like the price. But if you're an Eric Sprott or some multi-billionaire that wants to try to corner the silver market, you can't do it, because there's limits in place that are very clearly written down, and you cannot buy. I think it's 1,500 contracts. I believe the maximum is. Jim, you probably know that better than I do, but
so they raised it to 7,500, I think. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So how many ounces is that? Like what, 3.5 million ounces or something? 7,500 times 500.
Well, what PSLV does is they intercept the 1,000-ounce bars before they even get to COMEX. They don't buy from COMEX. They buy from the refiners. They buy from, or they buy from banks who take delivery from COMEX.
Right.
And so there's ways to get around that if someone's truly, wants to take.
For sure. Yeah, but the pricing, but that's not the pricing mechanism. So if you're gonna attack the pricing mechanism, you got to go after the paper market. So if you deal in the physical market, yeah, you're right. You could, but you're still getting priced on the paper market.
Yeah.
Right? So to break the paper market, you got to go in there and challenge them, right? And the regulatory system doesn't allow you to do it because of the limits that are in place.
Yeah. It would take a concerted effort by many, many, many wealthy people, all doing standing for delivery. And not only that, removing it from the vault system, taking it out of their in-system vaulting. But,
because can you imagine like the Sprott Uranium Trust, for example? They've been, there's uranium prices gone from, call it 30 to 45 or something in that range over the last, month or so. If you had, we know there's physical silver trusts in place, where there's a few of them around. PSLV is one of them. They go in and try to do the same thing. It wouldn't have an impact at all, because it's a totally different type of mechanism, and they've tried, but it has failed miserably. And when the Reddit crowd drove silver to $30 an ounce back, early in this year, you saw that CFTC clown come out on Bloomberg or Reuters or wherever, the CNN or wherever the hell he was getting interviewed, saying, "Oh, we're successfully tampered down the market." Well, you got a regulatory body telling the world that they were successful in preventing a market from going higher, and the damage that could have happened if they didn't do what they did would have been somehow devastating to the financial system.
Yeah.
So what they did was justified, right? And that's what this clown said on television. And this is a regulatory body preventing a commodity or preventing a price of something to go up. Like, who the hell gave this regulatory body the right to make a decision like that?
Yeah. So now, Keith, people think that we can just go and recycle silver instead of actually mining silver. But last time you were on Wall Street Silver, we talked about the actual cost of actual recycling silver. Can you give us a breakdown on why it's so hard to recycle silver and the actual cost?
Sure. Well, I've actually invested in 3 recycling companies. And I've actually gone to 2 of those recycling companies' facilities. Nice. And witnessed the recycling process myself. And I can tell you, there's no money in it. It is so complicated and so difficult. 2 of the 3 recycling companies that I'm aware of that I've actually invested in are now bankrupt. Only one has survived today. And the reason being is because the metal is just so embedded. These technology companies of the world are so good at making these circuit boards, and they've embedded all these, copper, gold, silver, you name it, all these different, metals into these circuit boards, and it's almost impossible to get it out. You throw chemicals at it, you break it up, you grind it down into powder, you throw fire at it, you throw whatever you can at it, and it's just costs, right? And there's not enough valuable metal in these boards to pay for all the cost that it takes to get these metals out. So like in a typical Apple phone, like my phone sitting here, there's apparently like $2 or $3 worth of silver in this thing. I know, other than what I've read on the internet, so I'm assuming that number's accurate. So, but it's going to cost you 3-4 times that amount, to try to get that silver out of there. So it just doesn't get done. It gets thrown in waste dumps. And that's why I've said several times on interviews that, 100 years from now, we're going to be mining waste dumps.
Yeah.
Because you can see in front of our eyes that grades on a global scale of mines are dropping. Silver grades dropping. And you look at the silver sector itself, and go back to 2015, 2016, where we peaked out at about 880 million ounces of production that year. And I think 2020 is a COVID year, mind you, but it was somewhere around 750 or 780 or whatever the number is. So, 21, let's call it 800 million ounces of silver. You know, we just don't have the metal. So, you know, we're, you know, all these televisions, all these refrigerators, all these stoves, toasters, you know, appliances, you know, you name it, are buried in dumps around the planet. And, you know, eventually that's going to be the cheapest way of getting access to metal. And it's pretty shocking, but
we're going to be measuring grams per ton of trash from waste dumps when we, it's like, hey, that old dump over there, it has 50 grams per ton of trash. We need.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, in a 40-inch television, apparently there's 3 ounces of silver in 40-inch television.
Really?
So, yeah. So have you ever recycled a television before in your life?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know of anyone that has.
Well, so where's the Silver Institute getting this number of, you know, I see 140 million, 160 million, you know, almost 200 million ounces of silver that they claim is being recycled.
It's a plug. It's a made up number.
Yeah.
So what they do is they estimate, they know what the supply is, generally speaking, okay, because a lot of it's public data. Some of it is not trackable because, you know, there's illegal mining and, you know, there's stuff under the table going into refineries in Dubai or, you know, wherever they're going, right? So, you know, they try to count as best as they can, but on the demand side, that's where the big flaw is. And you know, they'll count, you know, try to count how many cell phones Apple produced last year, but and they'll try to calculate how many ounces of silver are in those cell phones. And you know, look, I've said to the Silver Institute a number of times that, you know, they should hire their own staff to do all this detailed type of work, but they're not willing to do it, and the costs of doing it would be just too extraordinary. So there's just a ton of guessing that goes into this stuff, and then they come up with a negative number at the end of the day. So that is a plug. The hedging number is a plug, and the recycling number is a plug. So that's how they balance their financial statement, is with these fictitious numbers. And, you know, that's one of my biggest beef with these numbers is it's mostly all just bullshit.
You said, Keith, in prior interviews, we actually need to get rid of the futures market, and the producers should be able to control the price of silver. So how do we get there? Can we ever get rid of the futures market in the future, or there's just no way?
You know, I suppose the producers can just stop using it. It's a challenge though, because, you know, the miners, you know, look, the system's been in place for decades. So, you know, our money comes from the banks, right? So we sell our metal to the banks. You know, it goes through the refinery system, and we pay the refinery system a fee on a per ounce basis. You know, they spit this metal out at the back door, and the banks pick it up and sell it wherever they sell it. It goes into industry and so on and so forth. But we get a check from the bank, you know, within a couple of days of delivery, and it works super well. And you know, if you know, you'd almost have to take the banks out of the system, right? So you'd almost have, you would have to go direct to the consumer. And then this is what happens in the uranium. We keep talking about uranium, but the oil, I gather, is very similar as well. You know, where the producer is actually dealing directly with the consumer. You know, I'm reluctant to do that. Like we've been contacted by jewelry companies and by electronic manufacturers in the past who have tried to sign long-term contracts with us, but you know, they want to fix the price. Right. So why would we, you know, do a deal like that? Like if, you know, it doesn't make any sense. Our shareholders would not allow it, for one. So, and I would definitely not do it. So what's the benefit of us going direct to a Sony or direct to a Tesla or an Apple? You know, if they have 100% of our supply, but they're going to pay market prices for it, then yeah, sure, we would maybe consider doing something like that. But they're on the other side. You know, they're trying to fix their price because they're trying to, you know, de-risk their business. So there's a little bit of a conflict there. So you know, they go directly to the banks, and this is where the short position comes from. And this is my criticism of how the pricing mechanism works. So, you know, if you're JP Morgan or HSBC and you just sold, you know, 50 million ounces to Sony for the delivery to produce a bunch of televisions for, you know, 2021, it's in that bank's best interest to keep that price fairly stable. You know, at least under the price that they sold the silver at, right? Because, you know, they don't want to get screwed on that contract. You know, and that whole run from, you know, basically $40 to $50 back in 2011 was short covering. And that was a phenomenon that occurred as a result of that. And they were hurting a lot. And that's why they smashed it down the way they did, as fast as they could, because of the pain that they were under. So, you know, I would love to see it, but it's a bigger problem than just the futures exchange. You have to take the banks out of the system, and the miners have to step up to the plate. And this is one of my messages to the mining sector: is let's stop using the mechanisms that we're currently using to price this valuable material.
But you know, I'm here in Idaho right now at the Silver Symposium, and I ran into Todd Anthony, one of your guys here, and he was mentioning that almost you do sell almost 5% of your production direct to what's the percentage of your production that you sell direct on your website through retail? Is it in the 5% range? Or?
Yeah, you know, if he's throwing that number out, it's I'm sure it's accurate. We're you know, I haven't actually done the math, but yeah, it's a reasonable part of the business. I'd love to see it. You know, if it was my choice, I would have 100% of our silver going to our website.
I want to see 1,000-ounce bars on your retail site then.
Well, we've just released 100-ounce bars less than a month ago, and they're 100-ounce stackable bars, and you know, they're pretty cool. I was reluctant to, because I didn't think, you know, I thought it was too big for people to buy, but you know, people are buying them, so I'm not sure if we'll ever get up to 1,000-ounce bars. But
well, you're seeing SD bullion and silver gold bull and a few others are now, and it's like a new thing for them, but they're moving. And there's another website that's literally, they're taking delivery from COMEX and they're slicing up 1,000-ounce bars into these little 100-ounce chunks, and they're, you know, stamping them, and those are selling great too. Just literally destroying 1,000-ounce bars from COMEX. So
that's interesting. Yeah, look, as I say on my Twitter feed on a regular basis, you know, buy physical, because you know, the solution to this whole issue that we're discussing today, you know, about pricing and all that, it's really comes down to the physical supply. Like we know, you know, total, and I kind of got off topic a few minutes ago, as I wanted to talk about the whole Reddit crowd and you know, this whole CFTC clown that came out and, you know, tampered the metal price down. They got freaked out, right? So you know, because that's the inelastic part of this whole pricing. Like they know what the commercials need coming up over the next year, approximately, right? You know, they have their own internal mechanisms. They know what Sony wants. They know what, you know, Tesla wants, Apple wants. They kind of get an idea, right? What they don't know is what the retail crowd is going to buy, right? And the retail crowd is the ones that can really screw them really bad, right? So you know, so here's the Reddit crowd that came in and drove the silver price up to $30, and they absolutely freaked out, right? And then, of course, you get all the headlines. I don't know how many fund managers came out against the move, right? Oh, these Reddit investors are stupid. They should not be allowed to invest in the stock market because they're uneducated investors. You know, come on, give me a break. Like, I don't know, over a period of like 5 days, I don't know how many clowns they brought onto CNBC trying to tell the Reddit crowd they're a bunch of idiots, right? And they tried to smash down they did effectively smash down the silver price, because they're trying to scare this retail crowd away, because it's worked in the past, right?
It's, you know, it's worked again. I mean, you know, look, hey, they successfully knocked it down again to what, 23
and they scared away the retail demand, right? So you know, if the retail demand would just be frustrated and say, screw you, we're going to keep doing what we're going to do, eventually they would win. But the problem is, you know, that the dark side has the control over the headlines, and and the retail crowd, tends to move from story to story. So, my efforts are always try to get people educated in the silver market, because it's just
well, we're doing our bit for God and country here also for the silver market.
It's crazy tight market, and people actually really understand how tight it is. I personally think that the supply demand fundamentals for silver are the best they've ever been. When I put First Majestic together, 19 years ago, it seems like yesterday, but my entire thesis, because I came from a copper company, as many people probably know, but my entire thesis was based on computers and then cell phones. And I was actually a computer salesman as a young kid in the 80s, before I got into the mining sector. So I've always followed technology quite closely. But today, we've got solar panels and electric cars, which didn't exist, basically for the most part, when I put First Majestic together. And we've got two industries now that are consuming over 20% of the world's supply of this silver, and both of those industries are growing, substantially growing over the next couple of years, and a couple of decades. So there's really no place for silver to go but up, in my opinion. It's challenging. It's just it's like anything. It's just
hey, I have one First Majestic question, and it was a fella here about, do you mind answering a question about Jarrett Canyon, the new acquisition?
Absolutely.
His question was the big issue, you acquired it and you're trying to put more capital and make Jarrett Canyon more efficient, correct? That's the challenge with that project. And and I don't understand the question specifically, but maybe you will. His question was, how are you going to keep the roaster fully supplied? Is that the issue with Jarrett Canyon, is getting enough ore material going through the system to bring the cost of production down?
Yeah, I guess from a simplistic nature, yes, but there's you've got a mill that's the roaster itself has approximately 6,000 ton per day capacity. I don't think it's ever run at those levels, but I think on the back of the envelope, I think that's its capacity. But our goal is to get that system, that mill, including the roaster, up to around 3,500 to 4,000 tons per day by the end of 2023. It's currently operating at about 2,200 tons per day. So it's not quite a double, but close. And, it's producing somewhere close to 110,000 ounces of gold in 2021. By 2024, we hope that number is going to be 200,000 ounces of gold. We expect it to be. Drilling is going very, very well. First, if you go back and look at First Majestic, what have we been good at doing? Like, we're turnaround artists. We buy assets that are somehow distressed, and every asset over the 19-year history of the company, we've turned around and built pretty interesting business as a result of that. So Jarrett Canyon is known as the high cost producer. The problem with Jarrett Canyon, it was owned by a private company for the last 6 years. There's really no visibility in the public realm about it, and the company that owned it prior to that went bankrupt. So, so people are going, okay, First Majestic bought this gold mine in Nevada, blah, 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 blah. But we're super excited about it. This is a big, big, chunky asset. Jarrett Canyon used to be the largest gold mine in the state of Nevada. We're growing this thing. We've replaced the entire management team there. We had a great August. We're going to have a great end of the year with that mine. And it's not silver. I wish it was a silver mine. But I can tell you, gold has brought a lot of stability to the business. Silver being so volatile, and so it just flies all over the place. At least with gold, it's less volatile, and then we can measure the business a little bit more easily. So we can measure cash flows. We can plan our investments, and we're 55 silver, 45 gold, which is not a bad place to be. We used to be higher silver, but it's as I said, it's brought good stability to the business.
Well, you used to, the slogan for First Majestic used to be one metal, one country, right? It was all Mexico, all silver. And sort of now that you've moved, you're sort of, I guess, to reduce some jurisdictional risk, you've now gone big into Nevada. Do you see that as, and you've also recently made a a good sized investment in BlackRock Silver, which is also in Nevada and Tonopah. So is that sort of the future? I'm not asking you to comment on BlackRock specifically, but you see yourself acquiring more, you're looking more Nevada, United States, or less jurisdictional risk going forward?
If a great asset came up in Mexico, we would jump on it.
Uh-huh.
Mexico's not off the table in any stretch of the imagination. I'm not too thrilled about going south. Going into like Venezuela, well, Venezuela's a bad example, but going into Argentina or Peru or Bolivia, I wouldn't jump into any of those jurisdictions. And yes, there is a focus on North America, Canada, United States, potentially Australia. But it's hard to say what the next M&A, opportunity is going to take, right?
Hey, it's just between us. We won't tell anyone. What's your next?
We've always, I built this business for minutes, so we've always got balls up in the air, and you just don't know which one's going to land.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, Keith. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again in the future.
Great. Well, enjoy the discussion, and look forward to our next chat.